the Queen of Queens of the Atlantic Ocean, the goddess Elizabeth encounter my terrestrial wife. Days after relocating with the mermaid Elizabeth, I received the visit of my wife and child. I did not like this visit. I welcomed my wife and child at home and we were talking, when suddenly the goddess Elizabeth came out of the water in the basin. She was actually cooking in the kitchen. When my wife and child came, she stopped cooking and came out of the water in anger, and she was vibrating. I saw that her hair was stretched up and her eyes has become red. She said, "Baby, what have you done? Why have you allowed this to happen? They should never come here. You know it perfectly well." While Elizabeth was shouting, my wife and child could not see or hear her shouting. She said, "Who are these people?" I said, "They are my wife and child." She replied, "I can see that she has come here to provoke me and cause trouble. You see, she is the one who started it. She's gonna pay." I saw that Elizabeth was holding a knife and she was determined to stab my wife and child. She said, "Baby, I am gonna kill her now. Do you want me to kill her now?" I was begging Elizabeth, who was extremely angry, and trying to calm her down, since she was extremely angry. When I felt that she was about to kill my wife, I immediately invoked the angel of Satan called Jorgen. This angel of Satan was put in my disposal to pray and intercede for me. She also resolved conflict in marriage of Satanist and water mermaid. I know pastor and evangelist in the city that are married to water mermaid, and they work with these angels of Satan that restrict the mermaid from killing their terrestrial wives and children. When this angel landed in the house, she began to calm down the goddess Elizabeth, and I saw that the knife she was holding in order to kill my wife had returned to its previous form. The mermaid said to this angel of Satan, "You're gonna tell Baby, this is the last time this woman and child come here, otherwise I will kill them. Anyway, I am asking my daughter to monitor them. This is a warning, for I will not hesitate." As the angel of Satan continued to calm her down, I continued to talk to my wife and child. I said to my wife, "I am traveling to Central Congo. I won't be here for months. You're gonna stay with my mother or you can go back to your family." My wife began to protest, saying, "You already found an accommodation. We should live together. I am not leaving." But the more she spoke, the more I became restless and animated by the spirit of anger, and I threw a bottle toward her. Thank God I missed her, though she was injured by projectile. And when I began to beat my wife, I saw the goddess Elizabeth, who was laughing and very happy. Quickly the neighbor came to intervene and they took my wife away. When she was about to leave, I wanted to give her some money that Elizabeth gave me, but the latter would not let me give her the money. She was so angry that she told me, "You gonna take that money from her?" I don't want her to take my money. Elizabeth told me, "Since you are aggravating me, I will get your son blood, and if you continue with this attitude, my children will kill your family." I wanted to call Jorgen, the angel of Satan, for the second time to calm Elizabeth. I noticed that she had cut all my communication. I realized that I had no choice but to get Elizabeth money from my wife, for she threatened to kill my wife because of her money. When my wife and child left, Elizabeth said, "Baby, get inside the house and sit down." When I got inside, she came to sit on my lap and began to caress me. I came to realize that mermaids are creatures that are advanced in terms of seduction, lust and sexuality. They are spirit of sexual impurity. When Elizabeth was caressing me, I felt a peace like never before. Later we went to a bar in the city. When I ordered the beer, I asked Elizabeth, "What are you going to drink?" She said, "I have a glass of blood that I will drink." I asked her, "Whose blood are you gonna drink?" She said, "It's the blood of your son. I already told you, but he will not die. This is to warn you that if you continue with that woman, I will kill her." Few days later, I got a call from my mother telling me that my son was in critical situation. I invoked the God of Union. The latter told me, "I cannot do anything about your child. Your case is in the hand of the Queen of Queens of the Atlantic Ocean in Nigeria." I asked for a password so that I can travel under the ocean to meet the Queen of Queens that I met last time. But this God said, "You are stubborn and don't obey. That is why you are in this situation." I tried to beg this God, but he was categorical, for in the world of Satan there is no such thing as mercy and compassion. They don't change their no to yes. When I came face to face with Elizabeth, I said, "What are you trying to do? Are you trying to kill my child?" "You will not kill my child. Otherwise you will have to kill me." Elizabeth replied to me, Abby, do you know that if you die today you will still be my husband and you will be with me? Whether you are alive or dead you will be my husband beneath the Atlantic and in the surface, and we will continue as usual. And you are not going anywhere, and it make no difference whether you are alive or dead, for you are linked to me. You have no place to run away from me. We shall always be husband and wife. Marine spirit and the search of human body. Elizabeth told me, darling, the time has come for me to incarnate a human body. I cannot continue to live on the surface of the earth without a body. I need to operate physically on the earth. Render me this service. I need the body of a lady to function in the world of man physically. You need to navigate the street of the city in order to find me the funeral of a woman. I will need to use her body in the physical world. I began to navigate every street of the city in search of a funeral. In the end I saw a family that had lost a loved one and they were in mourning. When I saw the photo of the deceased woman, Elizabeth instructed me to follow the body to the burial ceremony. When we arrive at the cemetery, a pastor began to pray for the burial ceremony. There are pastors when they pray whatever they say is done in heaven, but they are also pastors when they pray their word are empty. And when this pastor was praying and declaring words, I checked his spiritual condition and I saw that he was empty and his words were powerless. He was saying, I stopped and block spirit that come to use corpses in the cemetery in the name of Jesus Christ, but in truth there was no power in his words. When it was time to drop flower in the tomb, Elizabeth said to me, when you drop flower recite my name 3 times. This was her password. When I dropped the flower in the tomb, immediately the spirit of the deceased lady that was in the coffin rose up and joined me, and we went out of the cemetery and began to walk in the street. The eyes of this lady was closed but she was walking after me. As we walked the street, whenever there was the presence and power of God, Elizabeth was telling me to deviate, for God power can cancel and abort this operation. Later I summoned my owl that was supposed to set up a perimeter of protection of about 30 meters to prevent power and rays of men of God from returning this woman's spirit to her tomb. When I got to Elizabeth, she entered the body of the lady which disappeared. Later on, when I was at home, I saw the lady that I brought from the cemetery. She was walking physically in the street. It was actually the goddess Elizabeth that was animating her body. She was indwelling the body of a deceased woman. It was then I began to live with this goddess physically. People were asking me who was the lady, and they encouraged me to live with her, for she had a beautiful face. When she became physical, she said to me, since you helped me get this human body, I need more of your help. You gonna travel beneath the Atlantic to get my 3 children to join me on the surface of the earth, so that they can also influence this generation. Brother, there are marine spirit leaving oceanic water and they are coming to live physically here thanks to the corpse of the deads. This is why there are people who resemble late people that we know. You may see a man who look like your late loved one with minor facial difference, for these spirit perform minor facial change of the corpse that they incarnate, like on the nose or mouth or eyes. Days later, Elizabeth told me, given that you gave me this body, I will return the blood of your child. But there is a woman in this compound with a child, her husband is abroad. I will kill their child, for my children need human body. The following day in the morning I saw Elizabeth laughing excessively. As she continued to laugh, I began to hear the cries of my neighbor. It was the death of their child. In that very morning where the child died, Elizabeth sent me to get her daughter beneath the Atlantic Ocean. On that day I recited password and a portal was open leading to the shore of the Atlantic Ocean, where I was welcomed by Elizabeth's daughter. I said, your mother has sent me to take you to the surface. I recited password again and another portal was open in the Atlantic Ocean. I began to descend in the water. When I passed the first layer of the water, I reached the second ocean beneath the first water, where I saw monstrous beast. I saw hippopotamus and rhinoceros. They were scary and monstrous in comparison to our animal. They were unimaginable. And finally I reached the third level of oceanic water, which was the Atlantic civilization. I was received by the Queen of Queens of the Ocean, who gave me instruction as to how to function and to carry out my mission. In the end I brought Elizabeth's daughter on the surface of the earth. When she arrived in my house, Elizabeth sent me to the cemetery where the deceased child was to be buried. On that day I was supposed to get the body of the child home, and get the daughter of Elizabeth inside the corpse, to enable her to live in the physical world with a physical body. I went to the cemetery and I dropped rose flower on the tomb of the child, and I did magic prayer. As a result, the spirit of the child came out of the cemetery and started to follow me. I began to guide her towards our place. I made sure to deviate from street where there was God power that could abort this operation. When I arrived home with the spirit of the child, Elizabeth's daughter did magic formula in order to enter the corpse. I gave Gabriel the body of the child who died in our compound. Marine spirit are jealous, that is why Elizabeth was desperate to kill my wife. A house with unseen resident. Later Elizabeth said to me, "You are going back to your parent place, but don't take anything, because we got to do human sacrifice before leaving the house. You see our neighbor, the young man sitting there? He is the one to die. He'd just have to sleep in our house." Immediately I went to the young man. I said, "Brother, I am traveling out of the city. Would you like to be sleeping in my house in my absence?" The man agreed. The young man agreed to sleep in my place. However, in the night he began to see paranormal phenomena. He saw monsters and beasts of the Atlantic Ocean that I saw in the second layer of the oceanic water, such as serpent, anaconda, crocodile and so on. He also saw Elizabeth's daughters that were resident of our home. As a result, he lost his mind in the morning, and he was shouting, running and talking nonsense and asking for help, for he claimed to have been attacked by beasts and monsters. A false pastor, then a prophet in the neighborhood, came to intervene. However, his power was not from God. He came to capture these spirits that were tormenting the young man in order to put them under his service. For the young man kept saying, "I am seeing mermaid, they are beautiful, people come to see them for their hair are long." But when this prophet came, he encountered oceanic mermaids that were very powerful. He also came face to face with demonic beast of the Atlantic Ocean. Though the prophet worked for the devil, he has not encountered these marine power before, and when he tried to overpower oceanic mermaid and beast, he lost his mind and became crazy. The young man and the prophet that have gone made were taken to church, and when people were praying for the prophet, the oceanic mermaid began to talk in the mouth of the prophet, and they said, "We are not leaving his body. He tried to choke our crystal, and he tried to move in our rays, which enable us to live in the surface of the earth. Where are we supposed to stay if he enter our rays?" This church was unable to cast out these marine spirit of the ocean. The young man that had gone crazy was chained, and the prophet was taken to his church where people were praying for him. The neighborhood became suspicious about me, for they began to hear voice of spirit in my house. Elizabeth called me and said, "You brought these ladies from the ocean to the surface, but you are failing to find them human body, yet you had agreed in your mission to assist marine spirit in providing them human body. You got to understand that they cannot become wandering spirit. You got to find them bodies." Later on, the whole neighborhood were running from me. They knew that I was a Satanist. I was responsible for the death of the young man who slept in my house. I was still allowed to get inside the house and collect my good in order to relocate. Brother, when you want to rent a place, you got to take over the land, as there are house that belonged to an unseen spirit. They were dedicated to evil spirit, though we know the landlord, but the real landlord are invisible. On that day we took out the furniture and we were on the way to my mother's house. When I reached the bridge over the river Njili, I was stopped by soldiers who refused to let us pass. Elizabeth told me, "I have to do a demonstration here." Then I saw 3 ladies coming, and Elizabeth did signs with her hand. As a result, 3 princes of the sea showed up, and she gave them lotion so that they can apply them on the 3 ladies that were coming, in order to make them seductive. These princes apply the lotion on the 3 ladies, who became seductive, and when the soldiers saw these women, all their attention went to them. As a result, they asked us to leave. When we have moved forward, Elizabeth ordered the 3 princesses of the sea to jump in the stream, the house of my mother and evil resident. When we got home, Elizabeth said, "Now I need some company, and I need 5 princesses of the sea to keep me company in this house of your mother." I contested, but Elizabeth insisted. I saw Elizabeth lifting her hand. As a result, she was joined by water spirit in the house of my mother, which was changed. The more I lived with Elizabeth in this house, I saw that the house of my mother was no longer on the surface of the earth but beneath the water. In truth, we were living underwater, but no one in the house was able to see this reality. I was able to see marine beasts like anaconda, demonic crocodile and demonic tortoise that were crawling all over the house, but my mother and sister could not see them. I saw that our house was beneath the Atlantic and all the beasts were moving around. One day a man of God was passing in the neighborhood. He said there are houses that are not on earth, they are in the spirit world, and the resident are in prison in the unseen world. Days after moving in my parent place, my mother said to me, "My son, I was sleeping and dreaming. In this dream, when entering the compound, I saw a crocodile that I have never seen since I was born. This kind of crocodile does not exist on the earth. I have watched many documentary about animal and I know the kind of crocodile we have on the earth, but that crocodile in the dream was something else." I said, "Mother, you must have watched a movie about crocodile." As we were talking, I heard Elizabeth and marine spirit of the sea laughing. I knew that the house of my mother has become an habitation of all kind of beast of the Atlantic. One day I was sitting on the sofa and relaxing. I saw little snakes that were moving all over the house and then all over my body, wrapping around me. Another day I saw a snake entering the house and heading to my mother's room. Very quickly I grabbed that snake. A princess companion of Elizabeth was upset. She said, "Baby, why have you grabbed my child that way? You should not have done that." This princess said to the snake, "My son, since he grabbed you that way, enter in his body." I saw this snake entering my body in the speed of light. The princess, who was a friend of Elizabeth, told me, "From now on you shall be eating sand just like my child, that is in your body, in order to feed my child." I was no longer eating normal food and my health began to deteriorate. These marine spirit were dictatorial, for when they said something they don't budge, and if you fail to do it, it's punishment. I began to feel like the God of union was far from me. The carnal pastor and the beast of the Atlantic. While my mother was troubled by the vision of the crocodile, a pastor saw that I was in the occult and he came with my mother to pray. Elizabeth and I were geared up for combat against this pastor. The man of God had no understanding about the kind of power he was dealing with. In order to overcome the enemy in spiritual battle, you're gonna need to be a dedicated servant who is serious with the Lord. This man said to me, "I saw you with a tail. I need to pray for you and your family." And when he was invited by my mother to pray, on that day during prayer, spiritual battle began in the house. When I opened my spiritual eyes, this man of God was empty and low. During prayer, my wife Elizabeth got the whip of Johnny Walker, who is the master of discipline in the world of Satan, and she began to whip the spirit of the pastor with Johnny Walker whip, telling him to die. As the battle went on, I saw the demonic crocodile of the ocean swallowing the man of God, who began to sweat. The man was alive, but he was already devoured by the crocodile and taken to captivity. Later this pastor invited me and asked me about my practice, and he seemed interested. I was stunned to see this man of God interested in joining my satanic practice. I gave him a book, for he was curious. I recommended him to join our congregation. He did not hesitate to go to our church. He was welcomed and dipped in the water of purification and was supposed to go through ritual. We were in the basement of the church where he was asked to kneel down, and when he did, a master appeared and placed his hand above his head. Immediately I saw the pastor shouting, "What have you done to me, baby?" He was in agony. At that moment I saw another copy of the pastor that was behind us. This clone of the pastor was his spirit that was in chains like a captive. The pastor body was kneeling and crying before us. The priest said we wanted his body to be around his spirit that was already captured when he was swallowed by the crocodile. The priest said, "Even if you cried, we got you. We have your spirit and your body where we wanted." The demon Okionim was introduced in the pastor body so that he can animate the body, and the pastor spirit was held captive in chain in this place. The spirit of sickness was also introduced to the body of the pastor so that he will die in 3 days. When the pastor got home, he lost his mind, and there was clamor in the neighborhood. People kept saying this must be the young man Bobby, he is a Satanist. When my mother came, she heard about what happened to the pastor. Quickly she went to see him and I follow her. When we got to the pastor place, I saw intercessors praying, but there was just very little bright light of glory over them. The presence of God was minimal among them. Elizabeth said to me, "Bobby, send these intercessors the spirit of fornication, so that we can turn off their little light and the little glory of God around them, and then we can finish off the pastor." Quickly I sent the demons of fornication in the body of the intercessors, but one of them fell to the ground and began to speak in strange tongue. I told Elizabeth, "I sent them demon, but one of them is speaking unknown language." Elizabeth said, "Let me send you the interpretation of the unknown language. Now place your hand on your ears." Immediately I placed my hand on my ears. I began to hear the lady in my native language. The lady was saying, "You will not introduce the spirit of fornication in this body. I can see where you are. You have to understand that I am Jesus Christ and I am the master of all spirit, and I command you to move away and depart." Immediately Elizabeth said to me, "Never listen to him, don't ever follow his order, stand there right there." The Lord continued to speak and said to me, "Leave now, I am ordering you, I am Jesus Christ and I command you to leave." But I kept saying, "I am not leaving." Then Elizabeth said, "Command him in my name." I said, "In the name of the Queen of the Sea Elizabeth, I command you to keep quiet." Jesus replied, "You are stubborn and you dare to speak that way. Now you will see." When Jesus spoke that way, immediately I saw the lady that was speaking in tongue rising from the ground, and she took her cover, and when she covered her head, I saw powerful and shining angels landing in great speed. When I saw them I began to run away and I flew away, but I saw the angel of God flying after me. When I was flying in space, Elizabeth said to me, "Do not enter the river, for you are not coming out if you dare, just go to the lodge." When I reached the crossroad leading to the lodge, I saw the cherubim of Satan in the name of Lord. He was robust. He landed in the crossroad and said to me, "Fear not, stay behind me." He said to the angel of God, "This zone belongs to us, you cannot enter." The angel of God replied, "We are entering this zone." Immediately the cherubim of Satan said, "Baby, just go to the lodge." Immediately I flew towards the lodge while there were two angelic battle happening behind me. When I arrived in the lodge, I saw all the masters. They were gathered in prayer supporting the cherubim of Satan, that was locked in continual battle with the angel of God. We sat watching intense angelic fighting happening in the crossroad. There was an atmosphere of fear and grave danger. We knew that the defeat of the angel of Satan was our destruction, the Queen of Queens of the Atlantic and the God of Union. We pray with intensity. The more we pray, I saw that we were descending beneath the water, and I saw that we were finally under the Atlantic Ocean, and I saw the Queen of the Atlantic Ocean. She showed up abruptly. She said, "The situation is grave. This battle is no longer in your level. I gave you my daughter Elizabeth with great power, but how did you end up in a situation where you face a lady opposing my daughter, and using that name against Elizabeth? We need to call the God of Union." Whenever this God appeared, the environment changed and disappeared in order to be replaced by a mountain rising from the ground. When he called the God of Union, I heard the sound of the bell that rang 3 times to signal his arrival. When the God of Union showed up in this gathering beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a mountain rose from the ground. A voice said, "Greet the God of the Union." When we bowed down, the God of Union appeared in space on top of the mountain, and there was sound of thunders, lightning and reverberation, and behind him there were countless angels having many wings. I saw that these angels were holding trident in their hand. This time around the God of Union did not speak in Japanese as usual. He said to the Queen of the Atlantic, "Queen of the Sea, Queen of the Water, don't be angry, just keep doing what I am asking you. When I ask you to do something, I know what I am doing. I am the one that put Bibi under your care, so that he will be empowered with the power of the Marine Kingdom. You got to unite with Elizabeth in order to battle that woman until death. I want Bibi to sleep with her mother during this week because I want the seed of that child." Then the gods of Union disappear. At that moment Elizabeth said, "Let greet the Queen of Queens, the great Queen." We all greeted the Queen of Queens, and I saw countless goddesses, princes and queens of the Atlantic, and they held women beads. I saw that Elizabeth and the Queen of Queen had the same face. Then I saw the Queen of Queens of the Atlantic adopting another appearance. She was more beautiful with new kind of hair and nail, and she was shining. Then she laid on the ground. I saw the siren coming up with the skin of a crocodile that had green liquid, and they put bead in that liquid. and they began to rise in space, telling us that they would come back in 2 days. Then I returned to my body. Immediately I got a call from these siren. They said, you need to find us bodies urgently, for the pastor is to die and your mother must get pregnant.